The top 25 players under the age of 25. These are some cornerstone players that you should be building your team around. What is at the core?
Yes.
Oh, wide receiver position, running back, or even tight end position. We're going to be breaking it down. We have 8 tiers for you. Zach, your tier number 1.
25 under 25. So nice they said it twice.
Ooh,
But yeah, just to be clear, if someone's 25, they're not on this list.
Yes.
Cornerstone, and we aren't including quarterbacks because it would just be a ton of quarterbacks. But my tier 1, all right, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson. That's it.
Okay.
That is it. I know,
Okay.
might spark some controversy, but CeeDee Lamb, if you look at what he averaged last year on a per game basis, it's more than. And let's talk about the first player in tier 2, which is Jamar Chase.
Mm-hmm.
CeeDee Lamb last year averaged more points per game than Jamar Chase has ever averaged.
Sure.
More than what Justin Jefferson has ever averaged. And I get that people are concerned about Justin Jefferson's quarterback play, but if you look at Justin Jefferson without Kirk Cousins in those splits, Jefferson has still been one of the most dominant receivers in the entire NFL. So at the end of the day, it's not anti-Jamar Chase. It's just, hey, at this point, we're multiple years into your career, and I don't see a reason why there shouldn't be a distinction between someone who has produced that way and someone who hasn't.
Okay. Look, I would have Jamar Chase in that tier 1, and I think, yeah, I can understand the points per game is pretty big, but I think there's also been a lot of ups and downs and inconsistencies when it comes down to both Jamar Chase's health at times and the same thing with Joe Burrow. But at the same time, it's not that big of a deal at the end of the day. What's the difference between tier 1 and tier 2? You're still going to be the top 3.
Yeah.
These are top 3 wide receivers, regardless that you're going to be building around your dynasty
Absolutely.
team.
I'm totally willing to tier down from Lamb or Jefferson to Chase, so maybe it's a little hypocritical. But to be honest, the reason why I couldn't put Chase in tier 1 is because then I'd have to put Amon-Ra St. Brown in tier 1, and it feels weird. And so this is the dilemma I'm currently going through. I'm just going to be honest with you. It feels weird because at the moment, someone's going to have to convince me, outside of using draft capital, why Jamar Chase is that much more valuable than Amon-Ra St. Brown. So someone's going to have to convince me here, okay? Look at points per game in the last 2 seasons. Amon-Ra St. Brown, last year, 16.7. Chase was at 20. This year, Amon-Ra St. Brown, 20.7. Chase at 16.5. So someone's going to have to convince me why Amon-Ra, again, outside of draft capital, why is he in a different tier than Jamar Chase? And ultimately, maybe this is on me. Maybe I should have Jamar Chase and Amon-Ra St. Brown both in tier 1. But I just wanted to try and make a distinction. And I get it. Like, injury has really hurt Jamar Chase.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that conversation when it comes down to Jamar Chase and Amon-Ra, I think another argument that people would say is a quarterback play. Joe Burrow, long-term franchise quarterback. Jared Goff, still hasn't gotten that contract extension.
Is there a year or two between those guys in their age? Jared Goff and Joe Burrow?
Exactly.
Goff is 29 and a half. Burrow is 27 and a half. What, 2 years between them? I don't know.
Yeah, and I think it just might be a little bit more consistencies or higher upside when you think of maybe where these quarterbacks are being drafted. Once again, it's not my perspective. I'm just thinking about what other people, maybe what the community, maybe what we're going to be seeing in the comments. Joe Burrow, first overall pick. Jared Goff, if I'm not mistaken, first overall pick as well. The success and pathway has been a little bit different. A lot of more inconsistencies on Jared Goff's side, more consistencies on Joe Burrow's side when it comes down to producing and playing at a high level. So look, I understand.
I get it.
When it comes
I'm not
down
worried
to
about CeeDee Lamb with Dak Prescott, who's 29, 30 years old.
Exactly.
I don't see a reason to be worried about Amon-Ra, who just, Jared Goff just led them to the NFC Championship.
Mm-hmm.
I also have Puka Nacua in this tier, by the way. In tier 2. Puka Nacua as a rookie, we know everything that he did, averaging over 17.5 points per game, wide receiver 4 finish. So, look, maybe I'm being too technical here. I just struggled to put Chase and Amon-Ra in tier 1. Maybe I should have just put both of those names in tier 1, but that's what my tier 2 looks like.
Yeah, look, once again, makes sense. Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka Nacua. What can you do there? That's going to continue to rise there with Puka. And I think Cooper Kupp, respectfully, is done, in my opinion. In fantasy. Yeah. In fantasy perspective.
I'm not going to say he's done. I think he could have a good bounce back, but it's not. There's never going to be a wide receiver 1 finish again for him.
Yeah, I think so as well. All right, tier 3. Take us through it.
All right, tier 3, we got some elite wide receiver prospects in Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors.
Yep.
There could be some scenarios for sure, depending on. Look, I think Marvin and Nate Malik are clearly better prospects than Puka Nacua was coming out. So there are some concerns there, but with what Puka has done historically, I just had to give him that respect to put him, in tier 2. And when I mean historically, I mean as a rookie. But Marvin, Malik, I have those guys back to back in my rankings. I would also add your Bijan Robinsons, your Jahmyr Gibbs, and your Breece Hall in this tier 3. Just pillars that if you have on your team,
no question,
you feel so comfortable building around. And a lot of people might have a problem with me having Neighbors there in tier 3. Guess what? If Neighbors gets drafted to the Bears, I can adjust my rankings because with new information, that allows me to change my opinion. But right here, right now, I think if we're talking about a running back that goes in the top 12 of the NFL draft or a wide receiver, typically I'm going to lean towards building around the wide receiver in Dynasty.
Yeah, and we completely agree there when it comes down to building over the wide receivers. Essentially, your wide receiver one, rookie one, and wide receiver rookie two. One B when it comes down to Malik Neighbors, depending on how you see it. And then you have the top 3 running backs in Dynasty consensus right here. However way you want to order it, Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, Breece Hall are all your top 3. So it just makes sense having all 3 of these guys in this tier here, especially. And like you said, the draft capital, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs were both top 12 draft capital. I know Breece Hall didn't have that opportunity, but had a phenomenal rookie year. Obviously comes back, has a great bounce back off that ACL tear, and finishes as a top 2 running back this past year for Breece Hall.
RB2,
yeah. And that was a year off of his ACL tear where he really didn't technically got the workload week 1 with that crazy game. But
he was worked into it.
Exactly, worked into it where he didn't even get the full opportunity. He was just, hitting those holes, having his vision there. So all 5 of these guys in these tier 3 is right on the nail for me.
Yeah, I love it. All right, tier 4. This is where I would put Rome Odunze.
Mm-hmm.
And I would prefer people to focus on the tier rather than exactly where I'm ranking the player. But I will put, Garrett Wilson, Drake London, and Chris Olave. That is what my tier 4 looks like. And I think these 3 names, Wilson, London, and Olave, are closer than people realize. Let's look at the last 2 seasons for all 3 of these names. In the last 2 seasons, Garrett Wilson, on a per-game basis, averaging 12.7 points per game. And then this year, 12.5 points per game. London, 10.5 as a rookie, almost 11 as a second-year player. Olave, 13.2 as a rookie, 14.5 as a second player. And you know what's funny about this is, if you just look at these stats right here on a per-game basis, why isn't Olave the number 1 ranked? Well, Olave was in a situation where his quarterback was healthy for the most part, and he is not getting a change at quarterback this year, right?
Yeah.
Whereas with Wilson, we believe Aaron Rodgers is going to be back and healthy. With London, he's getting Kirk Cousins, on that 4-year deal that he just signed in Atlanta. But even if you look at their team target share in the last 2 seasons, Garrett Wilson at 25% as a rookie, London at 29%, and Olave at 24% of the team target share as a rookie. Then in their second season, Wilson shoots up to 29%. London comes back a little bit to 22%. Right. And Olave shrinks a little bit, not very much. It's almost the same as his rookie season. The reason London came back a little bit because Bijan Robinson entered the scene. But you have to keep in mind that the Falcons were one of the bottom 5 passing offenses in the NFL when it comes to volume. So a lot of projecting here with these 3 names. To me, the names of Wilson, London, and Olave, those 3, to me, Olave has the least likely ability to drastically change his ranking after this year, in my opinion, based off of his situation. And then as far as Odunze goes, again, I have a right to change my ranking after the draft. If he does go to Chicago, we can change that up. But if he ends up in New York as the Giants' number 1, maybe I prefer him as a prospect. I don't think there's a flaw in his game. So just really, really good prospects, guys that could be number 1s for an NFL team. But do you have any disagreements with this tier here?
No, I would say, what I would say here for Chris Olave, because it's not that I have a disagreement. I think there could be a conversation for me where Chris Olave can be in tier 5, right? Okay. Because of the inconsistencies, in my opinion, of the quarterback play that we are projecting. You kind of mentioned that, right? You think Kirk Cousins comes in for Drake London and how he has produced, Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers and how he has produced. But at the same time, the argument for Derek Carr is there as well, where he's produced Devontae Adams, Amari Cooper in the past. But the inconsistencies that we saw last year makes me question whether Chris Olave should be in this tier with the projections of what we're expecting him to go into this year. Now, when it comes down to the statistical 2 years that we've seen, he's probably deserving to be in this tier, right? But at the same time, if we're projecting to telling people, okay, these are some top tier guys that you should be investing in, I'm not necessarily sure if Chris Olave, not based off talent, just based off situation, is deserving to be in tier 4 because of
we talk about change. We have to include all change. And some of the change for the Saints is they have a new offensive coordinator. And if you watched any Saints games in the last couple of years, you would have been like, what the hell is this offense? This is one of the most boring, nostalgic, or not nostalgic, but like stale offenses in the NFL. So they have changed their offensive coordinator, not quarterback. But so there is some change for Olave, but I think with his merit, we have to give him credit as well. But I can see where you're coming from. Yeah,
completely understand you. Let us know in the comments what you think of where Chris Olave should go. Maybe he should go higher. But take us to tier 5.
Just before we get into tier 5, Badaki and I want to let you know that if you want your Dynasty team reviewed by us on a live stream, you guys, if you know our channel, you've probably been seeing us live about 3 times a week at night, reviewing people's Dynasty teams.
That's right.
If you want that experience for yourself, it's very simple. All you need to do is become a Mother Flocker member with the code LAND. And once you've done those 2 things, your Dynasty team, we can have a review of it. Tell you what to do, trades, ideas, what to do with your draft capital, that kind of thing, what direction to move forward in. So we appreciate you. Check out the pinned comment. But yeah, tier 5 is kind of a messy tier. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, it feels like things are kind of a little bit all over the place in this tier, if I'm honest. Jonathan Taylor, which I feel good about. Sam Laporta, which I feel good about. And then Jalen Waddle, it's really difficult to place Jalen Waddle right now, but I think this is probably where I would personally place him here in tier 5. Laporta, obviously the rookie season that he had, not many, if any, have done that as a rookie. That's not the expectations we have for a rookie. And a solid, stable offense to continue to build around over there in Detroit. Jonathan Taylor has had some injuries in the past, but we know when he's healthy, there is no limit to what he can do in fantasy.
Yeah, and all 3 of these guys make sense here. And I would say there could be an argument now thinking about it, me looking into this video. I would argue Sam Laporta could be in tier 4 here. And now, it doesn't necessarily...
Well, just quickly, we are bringing this from a non-tight end premium perspective.
Yes. Completely agree. I guess maybe in a tight end premium perspective, it can easily be up there in tier 4. Totally. Maybe there's some other arguments to being higher. But Sam Laporta, what he did with this team and how he can be a pillar to the tight end position, who has been, we've seen fluxes of inconsistencies and consistencies depending on the player in that position over, especially it's only been year 1 with Sam Laporta. But the fact that he felt like he was very consistent week in and week out with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. And I know Jameson Williams missed those first 6 games, or first 4 games, excuse me. Yeah. It kind of makes me wonder if he is more deserving to be in tier 4 over, someone like Chris Olave, who technically hasn't broken these records like Sam Laporta has done in his position, or how he has, it feels like changed this offense all around, not only by himself, but with the help of his peers as well, with Jahmyr Gibbs and Dave Montgomery there. So I do agree with this tier, just also throwing the conversation
in the tight end premium. I have no problem with it, but in a normal startup, I'm not convinced that anyone's drafting Laporta over Olave. I could be wrong.
Yeah, and I also am saying, I think there is conversations for people. If someone sees Sam Laporta and Chris Olave, and maybe they already have their 2 wide receivers, hypothetically, they're probably saying, "Oh man, maybe I'll get Sam Laporta," because I think now Sam Laporta in a startup falls in that Mark Andrews, conversation, because that's what a lot of people were struggling with, the past 3-4 years with Mark Andrews. when he was doing his thing. He's still doing his thing. But yes, I hear you. Jalen Waddle, hard to rank. JT will be healthy. Tier 6.
Yeah, tier 6, I would put Brock Bowers at the beginning of this tier. I really need to know where he is. Maybe it's a little bit unfair because I'm giving Adunze and Neighbors and Harrison the benefit of the doubt, but I feel like I really need to know where he is, tight end specifically. I need to be able to envision.
Yeah, the
And
landing
also,
spot.
and I also think Laporta set really unhealthy expectations for Brock Bowers.
Sure.
Year, this is a guy we're talking about, one of the best prospects ever at the tight end spot. Well, Laporta, second round pick, broke all these records. I think we have set maybe unhealthy expectations for Brock Bowers because it is not normal for someone to produce the way Sam Laporta did last year as a rookie.
Yeah.
I put a bunch of running backs here: Etienne, Achane, Kyron Williams, and then I'll put a stamp on my guy. I know he's had some legal issues, but I would still have Rashee Rice right around this range here in tier 6. I did adjust slightly, but it's just my personal opinion, and I'm happy to be wrong. Let's say more stuff comes out in the news. Was there illegal guns involved or drugs or whatever that we don't know about right now? But like as of today, 4th of April, I don't know. It just looks like, from what I've heard, something that he's going to have a lawyer for. They're going to figure it out, and I don't expect him to be suspended very long, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not going to change my tune on Rashee Rice that much because of this situation. And in fact, I think this probably, in my opinion, makes Rashee Rice a huge buy. I'd be totally willing to buy Rashee Rice for like the 112, the 201, the 202, and early second in this year's draft. So I'll put Rashee Rice there. When he became a full-time starter, he was the most valuable player on the Chiefs. If you're looking at pound for pound, position by position. Obviously, in the playoffs, Kelsey came back to life, but I think Rice is set for a huge second year. If he is suspended, I don't think it'll be more than a couple games. I still have a lot of belief in him. Kyron Williams is scary, man.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Like,
yeah, tell me, because I have an opinion. But
the reason why I find him scary is because we've seen Sean McVay, bring in these late round gems. You can say, Puka, Kyron Williams. That can happen again this year.
Cooper Kupp was in the late round.
Exactly, so. Right? I mean, that can happen again this year. And if they bring in another running back, if they bring in somebody, and I think this is where my concern is another running back, because there's no depth on this team, right? I mean, if you think about it, is Zach Evans. But if they bring in some...
Don't sleep.
Yeah, right. I mean,
Zach Evans in tier 7.
Shout out to Zach Evans. But if they bring in one of these running backs that I think we do like, and we do believe that can take away opportunity away, and that can be from all the way the broad range of Bucky Irving to Ray Davis to Aldrick Estime to Braden Allen, whatever that looks like, there is a chunk or maybe a sliver of opportunity taken away from Kyron Williams. And then where's that opportunity lie? Because, I mean, this past year, if we really look at Kyron Williams, 228 attempts on the ground, 48 targets in the air.
And he only played 12 games.
And they had to bring in Darrell Henderson to come back off the street. Now you get a young rookie who's going to come in, take those opportunities, not because he's not deserving of it when it comes down to Kyron Williams, just because he needs help. There's no one else there. So I agree. Kyron Williams is somebody that I am concerned about coming into this year.
I'll even dive further into that. Things change so quickly in fantasy. Things change so quickly in the NFL. Kyron Williams, on merit for production efficiency last year, one of the most productive, efficient running backs in the entire NFL last year. Based off what he's done last year, there's no reason to believe that he's going to lose a job. Right. Or even that he's going to lose a significant portion of it. But there's a couple things working against him. Number one, he averaged, 21.3 points per game. He was an RB2 on a per game basis.
Yeah.
Do we think Kyron Williams, have we reached a ceiling? I think he's the RB6 in Dynasty right now. 21 points per game. It is, maybe he can keep repeating this. Maybe this is the start of his Austin Eckler era. But there is room for some regression on a per game basis, potentially. Like last year, Kyron Williams was one of the highest usage running backs when it comes to percentage of his team's rushing attempts and targets out of the backfield. If they add a competent guy to complement him, which it would make sense for their NFL team to give him a little bit more of a break, right? then that would compromise some of his upside. The reason I'm concerned more than anything is because of the way Sean McVay has used running backs in Los Angeles, right?
Right.
Sean McVay, check this out, hasn't had a running back with back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons since 2017-2018 season. Okay, since those 2 seasons. He also hasn't had a running back repeat as a team's leading rusher since 2019. In 2020, Cam Akers. In 2021, Sony Michel. In 2022, back to Cam Akers. In 2023, Kyren Williams. I don't think that Kyron's losing his job. I don't think Kyron's in jeopardy. But there is that little bit of history and just common, ability to think something through where you're like, in a way, I'm not nervous, but it's a little bit scary.
Exactly.
Because keep in mind, this time last year, Cam Akers was the RB20 in Dynasty rankings. Kyren Williams was the RB80. So you got a guy like Sean McVay who can easily make a lot out of what people don't see. It's just tough.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And just think about it. You're a Kyren Williams owner, and Isaac Correndo goes in the 5th round to the Rams. You're kind of questioning it. And Isaac Correndo, I mean,
what about Braylon Allen in the 4th or something?
Yeah, right. You throw any Marshawn
Audric
Lloyd,
Estime in the
Ray Davis, any one of those names automatically has you questioning Kyren Williams, not because of his talent, just because of what's that production going to look like going into 2024?
Or not even that like he's going to lose the job, just like there will be less touches. Maybe they'll scale him back a little bit. So
100% there. So I agree there with Kyren Williams. Travis Etienne is going to do his thing there with Trevor Lawrence.
If you have Etienne, I think you should be very happy with the way this offseason went for running backs, because running backs had a little bit of like a boost in their value, I guess, or like sustaination maybe.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, take us to tier 7.
Tier 7's huge, and any one of these guys could be in tier 6. Like I said, I put my name on Rashee Rice. That's fair enough. When he became a full-time starter, he was a top 15 wide receiver, and I don't think people realize how good he was. I'm happy to be wrong, okay? But you could put any one of these names in tier 7. Zay Flowers would be the beginning of the tier for me. Then I will put Tank Dell, Nico Collins. Big conversation we need to have about these 2 names.
Okay.
I would also add Brian Thomas Jr. without knowing his landing spot. T. Higgins, Devonta Smith, Jordan Addison, and we'll finish off the tier with 2 tight ends and Trey McBride and Kyle Pitts.
Okay.
So we've already gone over the 25 player limit, but it's hard to fit all these guys in one spot.
Yeah. I think
Tank Dell, Nico Collins.
Yeah, let's have that conversation. Yeah, because I know you've always had Nico Collins over Tank. Obviously, the addition of Stephon Diggs. I've always had Tank over Nico. I'm assuming that kind of changes your thought process now with Nico or Stephon Diggs being on this team.
It does. I'm in 2 mindsets, and I'll be honest. This news literally happened, an hour or 2 before we recorded this video, so we're still trying to process it, and my opinion could be different tomorrow or in a week from now. I need to still process everything, but here's what we can't say. We can't say that the addition of Stephon Diggs doesn't impact Tank Dell or Nico Collins.
Sure.
I get it. He was not good back half of the year for fantasy. If you look at weeks X to X, like he was very bad after the offensive coordinator change. But we're still talking about a guy that demanded over 140 targets like 3 or 4 years in a row. And now he's joining that offense. So inevitably, they trade for him. There is going to be an impact on Tank Dell and Nico Collins. I'll say this. If you were in on Tank Dell and Nico Collins, I think you had every right to be. Because those guys last year, because neither of them played 17 games, but on a 17-game pace, Nico Collins was on track to be the wide receiver 5, and Tank Dell was on track to be the wide receiver 12. So if you were in on those guys, it made a lot of sense. And by the way, the Texans weren't paying much to the wide receiver position. They were 23rd in cap percentage spent on wide receivers in the NFL. Now with the addition of Diggs, they jump all the way up to 7th in the NFL. So I get it. They want to go all in. It makes sense. But clearly there is some concern there moving forward. Now, my issue with Nico Collins is there is no security after this year. We know Tank Dell is going to be there at least for another 3 years. With Nico Collins, we don't know where he's going to go. But I can't like put Nico Collins drastically down my rankings because again, we're talking about a guy on a 17 game pace who was on track to be the wide receiver 5 if he played all 17 games.
Right.
Almost 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns, and did all that, by the way, on under 110 targets. So here's what I know. Guys who are productive at the wide receiver spot are gold in free agency. So if somehow Nico Collins went into free agency, I think he would get a huge bag to be a team's number 1 or, complimentary number 2. But obviously, we have to be somewhat concerned because it's a messy situation. The last thing I'll say is the reason I haven't given up hope on Dell or Collins, I still think there's a chance that Diggs is the worst player for fantasy on that team next year. Yes. I still think there's a chance. I'm not saying it will happen.
Yeah.
But the reason there is optimism is because if you actually break down Stephon Diggs' contract, it is a year-by-year basis from here on out. The Texans next year, if they want to cut Stephon Diggs, they can do it at $0 to their dead cap. It will cost them nothing. So if Diggs is not the same player that he used to be, they're either going to have to decide, do we want to cut him right now for nothing? Or do we want to pay him $20 million every year for the next, I think it's 3 years that he has an option, basically. So I think there's a scenario in which Stephon Diggs is very good and Nico Collins leaves. I think there's a scenario where Stephon Diggs is the third best guy there and they're thinking we're not going to pay $20 million to our wide receiver 3. And they pay Nico Collins a big deal and they let Stephon Diggs walk. What I know for sure is Tank Dell isn't going anywhere. That makes him the most safe asset of those 3, in my opinion.
I would completely agree. And what I do agree with is that I truly believe that I don't think Stephon Diggs coming to this team automatically puts him as the wide receiver 1. And I think a lot of people envision that, in my opinion. I think a lot of people think that Stephon Diggs, they traded for him. Nico Collins is taking a backseat. Tank Dell's taking a backseat. I actually think, I agree with you. They can cut him and nothing's going to happen when it comes down to, that salary cap. It's interesting in my perspective because Tank Dell has always been my guy over Nico Collins, but all three of these guys could potentially eat in this offense because you can see how they can set up this offense. Nico Collins maybe being now the Y instead of the X, where Stephon Diggs is the X, and then Tank Dell in the slot, or Stephon Diggs in the slot, and both.
That's what I was gonna say. I think
or Tank and Nico both outside, which we've seen. Yeah. We've seen this past year. Tank Dell, right, 70% out wide. Nico Collins is nearly 80% out wide. Stephon Diggs has seen the ability, or has been, in Buffalo specifically, in the ability to move inside and outside, and also Minnesota as well. So that's how I kind of envision this offense. I don't think, Stephon Diggs, in my personal opinion, immediately demands those 100 and something targets that we've seen in the past there from Josh Allen. So the reason why is because, the reason why is because Stephon Diggs had no one like Nico Collins and Tank Dell around him before.
Yeah.
His best player around him recently has been Gabe Davis. And both of these guys, Nico and Tank Dell, have played with CJ Stroud 1 year and has already had a higher finish, I guess, projecting, right? If we were to saying, okay, well, if Tank Dell would have finished the season and Nico Collins, projecting both of these guys being top 12 guys, where Gabe Davis wasn't. He's only had his breakout year in the playoffs, right? That little stint where everyone thought he was going to be. I mean, I fell for it. But Stephon Diggs, I personally believe that he's just another piece to this offense, and he's not necessarily number 1. I think it's going to be annoying for us because when you think of fantasy going into 2024, we're going to be asking, who should I start? Tank Dell, Nico Collins, or Stephon Diggs? And we're going to say, I don't know. Because that's exactly what's going to be like, because we don't know who's going to be the guy. You're going to hope that one of these guys get hurt and be like, okay, if Nico's is gone for a couple games, all right, at least we know Tank Dell and then Stephon Diggs is going to play an opportunity. So I agree. Tank Dell for me is high.
I hear where you're coming from. I think if we were, this is a Dynasty channel, obviously, but if we're talking redraft, I think it would be absolutely silly for anyone to have a strong opinion on who would be the most valuable play for fantasy next year. Like at this point, hours into the trade? I mean, this might be released a couple days after, but even then, like Collins, Diggs, Dell, I think it would be silly for anyone to have like a strong opinion, like I know 100% that X player is going to be the number one wide receiver in Houston for fantasy. Because I think it could be well spread out. I mean, the last time I could think about it, and it's honestly to a lesser extent, is Cooper Kupp, Brandon Cooks, and Robert Woods. But in a way, this is like a very well upgraded version of that. No disrespect to them.
I guess you can say Jamar Chase, T, and Tyler Boyd, but Tyler Boyd is nowhere near, I guess, that third player.
Yeah, that doesn't fit the bill for me yet because Boyd is, he's
There's
not
three
even
wide
number
receivers
two on many teams,
Yeah.
So the way I envision it is Nico is going to be primarily on the outside. He played 80% outside last year. And before that, 90% out wide and 83% out wide, averaging 84% out wide for his career. Dell played about 29% in the slot last year, and Diggs played 36% in the slot last year for Buffalo. That year, last year for Stephon Diggs, is his second highest snap percentage amount, I guess, percentage-wise, of snaps in the slot in his career. So from 2015 to 2023, last year was his highest percentage in the slot. I would not be shocked if Nico is their primary X, and Diggs and Dell are kind of these flankers that are moving inside-outside.
Yeah.
And again, that doesn't tell me who's going to be the most valuable player.
I'll tell you who.
Don't know.
I'll tell you who. Joe Moneybag Mixon.
Oh my god.
Oh boy.
Ridiculous. But anyway, we've spent a lot of time on that. The reason I put Zay Flowers ahead of them is because I feel like he's the unquestioned number one.
Sure.
The reason I couldn't put Higgins ahead of them is because I don't know where he's going to play next year.
Doesn't feel like he's moving to me at the moment, personally.
So, tough decisions to make.
Yeah.
Anyone else you want to talk about before we move on?
No, I think that kind of falls in. Brian Thomas, where is he going to go? Devonta Smith, you guys heard about that. Jordan Addison, what's going to happen with that quarterback? So I think there's a lot of things that are going to be resolved in the NFL draft for some of these players going into this year. So definitely stay tuned for that. But the last tier, take us through it.
Yeah, the last tier I just called fighting for a spot because I made this tier because I didn't want you guys yelling at me in the comments. Where the hell is this guy? You're an idiot, right?
Right.
So this is just a bunch of guys who are fighting to get into the top 25 at the age of 25 or under 25, all right? Kenneth Walker, Jackson Smith-Njigba, George Pickens, Jaden Reed, Lad McConkey, Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, Dalton Kincaid, who we can talk about, Troy Franklin, and James Cook.
Yeah.
That is my top 25 under 25, but it's really like 40 players. I'm trying to make everyone happy here.
And there's one player I think we should talk about here who's been most affected so far is Dalton Kincaid. He feels like he should be at least in tier 7 at this moment. Okay. The only reason why I say that is because I think he automatically becomes the number one receiver or target weapon on this offense, even if they were to bring in Xavier Worthy, even if they were to bring in Adonai Mitchell or Troy Franklin into this offense. I think he automatically steps up until that proven rookie is coming in. Now, I do believe all those guys, Adonai, Xavier, insert rookie wide receiver, could easily be the number one option and overtake, but I don't think it's going to be as easy. I don't think it automatically slots in to be, okay, here's 120 plus targets that Stephon Diggs no longer has. You actually have to earn that now. I think Dalton Kincaid earned that, and he takes at least 80, let's just say 60 of those targets, and the rest it gets to somebody else.
That's just, I just don't think it works like that. I don't think it's that simple.
That
would mean he had 150 targets. And that would be more than any tight end.
And I get that. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think that wide receiver that comes in, whether it's a rookie, depending on it, unless it's one of these top guys in the top tier and the Bills move up, I think Dalton Kincaid earns those targets over that rookie first until he has proven himself. That's
I just don't agree, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. You're telling me if Adonai, Xavier, or Lad go in the first round to the Bills, you're not taking them over Dalton Kincaid? I strongly disagree.
I'm not saying I'm not taking them, but I'm saying, like, at the moment, right now, if from what we know, Dalton Kincaid is the number one target in that offense, Now, when it comes down to the NFL
Okay.
draft, like you've been saying, is fluid. We can
okay,
move it.
but trying to project forward, what is a percentage chance that this team doesn't draft a wide receiver in round 1 or trade for an Ayuk or something?
Yeah, I think it's high, no question.
Okay, so
like,
what are we talking about then? You know, like it doesn't make sense then to me. But look, here's the thing: like to say a young wide receiver, they're gonna take a chance, they're gonna take a while. Like I just don't agree. This is the deepest wide receiver class we've seen in a long, long time, and we see young receivers produce every single year. I mean, imagine if Jordan Addison was on this team right now. You're telling me a guy like Adonai Worthy or Adonai Mitchell or Brian Thomas, if he goes there, you would say that like it's an inferior prospect to Jordan Addison? I don't. So I hear you. I think Dalton Kincaid is clearly a winner of that trade, but I don't think it means that now he's going to add 60 targets. I just don't think it works like that.
And look,
clearly he's going to be a winner. Clearly he's going to be a very good player. But there were moments there where Dawson Knox was their preferred weapon, which is ridiculous. I think that will change. I think there will be progression for Dalton Kincaid. But if you're telling me any of these wide receivers that we love are going to Buffalo in round 1, absolutely I'm betting on them to outproduce Dalton Kincaid in year 1, because we have seen young rookie wide receivers produce year after year after year after year, and we're talking about one of the best wide receiver classes we have seen in the last decade. So I get it, but like I'm just not, maybe I'm ignorant here. I'm not convinced that people are willing to trade away Kenneth Walker or JSN or a Reed or a Pickens for a Dalton Kincaid. I'm just not convinced. If they're in tight end premium, sure, but in a non-tight end premium, I don't think so.
I just think that his value rises at the moment, and I agree. Like, we're projecting, we're projecting for sure. I'm just saying, right now, I mean, Dalton Kincaid this past year got 90 targets. He wasn't even fully unleashed, and like 100 and adding 60 targets to that may seem absurd. But we've seen these tight ends who have been the wide receiver or have been the target one on an offense, produce, right? I mean, I'm not
saying he won't produce.
I know. I'm just saying basically what I'm saying is that I think Dalton Kincaid could be the number 1 target, even with one of these wide receivers coming onto this offense. That's basically that's my summary. Because I still believe in the Xavier Worthies, the Ladd McConkleys, the Adonai Mitchells. I believe they're going to come in and produce. I'm just saying I think Dalton Kincaid in this year 1, if one of those guys comes in, I believe Dalton Kincaid at the moment is a number 1 target, even with those guys coming in for year 1 specifically. I think they can overtake him easily in the 4 years span. But like you always say, we play in a 1 year span. Some people play 4 year spans. This year, hypothetically,
2 to 3.
Yeah,
years, but
I'm saying, like, if this year, I feel like Dalton Kincaid will be the number 1 target. Even doesn't matter who that rookie wide receiver is going to be coming in. That's basically what I'm. Basically what I'm saying.
I don't agree, but that's fair enough.
I
think he could, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he just is. If a Brian Thomas goes there or an Adonai goes there,
sure.
I can't agree with that.
I guess I'm not saying it's. Yeah, I'm not saying it's. Signed, still delivered. I'm just saying that's what
it sounds like. You're saying regardless of who goes there, you think Kincaid's number 1.
I think he could be the number 1. Maybe I said could or would, whatever language I said. I want to say that I do believe he is going to be the number 1 this year, and I guess that's me saying, I do believe in those rookies, but I also believe in Dalton Kincaid as a talent as well.
Sure. No, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean, let us know what you guys think in the comments below. Couldn't fit everyone in, unfortunately, but that is just the nature of a video like this. We appreciate you.
Yeah.
See you soon. All up. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, LAND, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy, even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.